Before we dive in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more gripping true crime stories just like this. The courtroom was silent, not the ordinary kind of silence. This was the kind that presses against your chest. The defendant sat still, expression blank, hands folded neatly. For 2 years, prosecutors had built what they called an open and shut case. Witnesses, a confession, circumstantial evidence, a motive that made sense. The jury believed they were close to the end, until one question changed everything. A simple question, one that no one had asked before. And when it was finally spoken aloud, the real killer shifted in his seat. Tonight, we uncover the moment that exposed the truth, and how one overlooked detail almost buried an innocent man forever. This is not just a story about murder, it's about assumptions. About how investigations sometimes follow the most convenient path, and how sometimes the truth survives because one person refuses to stop asking questions. It started on a quiet Thursday night. A suburban neighborhood, tree-lined streets. Security cameras on every porch. At 10:42 p.m., emergency calls flooded dispatch. A man had been found unresponsive inside his home. No forced entry, no sign of struggle, no neighbors reporting screams. Inside the house, everything looked almost untouched, except for one thing. The victim's office had been carefully rearranged. Not ransacked, rearranged. Drawers pulled open but not emptied. Documents stacked neatly. A chair tipped over, but positioned as if placed there. It looked staged, but staged by someone who didn't quite understand how chaos actually looks. Within days, investigators focused on one suspect, Daniel Reeves. A former business partner, they had argued publicly. There were financial disputes, emails filled with tension. And most importantly, Daniel had been near the neighborhood that night. That was enough. Police brought him in just to talk. He cooperated. He answered everything, but investigators had already formed a theory. And once a theory forms, evidence begins to fit itself around it. The room was small. Neutral walls, metal table, camera blinking red. Detectives laid out their case. You were angry. You were losing money. You were seen nearby. Daniel denied it. Again and again. Hours passed. Investigators pressed harder. They suggested things. Maybe it wasn't planned. Maybe it got out of control. But Daniel didn't break. He asked for a lawyer, and that single decision made him look guilty. At least to the public, the prosecution's case seemed clean. Financial motive, proximity, prior conflict, and one more thing. A partial fingerprint found inside the office. Not a full match, but consistent with. The jury leaned forward when that phrase was spoken. Consistent with, not definitive, but powerful enough. The defense struggled. No alibi, no alternate suspect, no smoking gun. It seemed inevitable. Until cross-examination began. A neighbor testified. He claimed he saw Daniel's car near the home around 9:30 p.m. The jury listened carefully. Under oath, the neighbor sounded confident, certain, unshaken. The timeline seemed to lock into place, but then the defense attorney stood up, calm, measured, holding a folder. And this is where everything changed. The attorney approached slowly. "Sir," she began, "you're certain it was 9:30 p.m.? "Yes." "You're certain about the time?" "Yes." She paused, then asked, "What made you look at the clock?" The courtroom went still. The neighbor blinked. Silence. He hadn't mentioned a clock before. He shifted. "Well, I just remember it was around then." The attorney stepped closer. "Did something happen that made you check the time?" Another pause. "No." "Then how do you know it was 9:30? His certainty cracked. I guess I assumed. Assumed. The word echoed, because if the time was wrong, everything changed. Cell phone records were re-examined. Security footage from nearby traffic cameras was pulled again, and that's when investigators saw it. Daniel S. car wasn't there at 9:30. It passed through the area at 8:12 p.m., 30 minutes before the estimated time of death. The timeline unraveled. If Daniel wasn't there at 9:30, then who was? The prosecution scrambled. The defense gained momentum, but the real twist hadn't surfaced yet. Because the fingerprint, it wasn't Daniel's either. It belonged to someone no one had questioned. Someone who had been present from the very beginning. During the second week of trial, a quiet detail resurfaced: the victim's assistant, Mark Ellison. He discovered the body. He called 911. He cooperated fully. He had access to the office. He understood the filing system. He knew what documents mattered. And most importantly, he had no visible motive, which made him invisible. Until someone asked a different question, not about time, not about fingerprints, but about knowledge. The defense attorney reviewed the crime scene photos again. The office looked staged, but something was odd. A document had been left on the desk, highlighted, circled, almost as if someone wanted it noticed. The document detailed an internal audit. An audit that implicated the assistant, Mark. When confronted, he remained calm until the attorney asked, "How did you know where the spare key was kept?" The room froze. Mark blinked because investigators had never publicly released that detail. The spare key's location had been confidential. Only the killer would know, and somehow, Mark had referenced it casually in an earlier interview. That was the crack, the mistake that couldn't be explained away. By the end of week 3, the narrative had flipped. The jury no longer looked at Daniel. They looked at Mark, but suspicion is not proof, and the prosecution resisted. Because admitting the wrong suspect meant admitting a flawed investigation. And institutions do not surrender easily. So the question became, would pride protect the real killer? Or would the truth finally win? End of part 1. Comment if you believe the truth can be hidden in plain sight. Subscribe for more shocking true crime stories that defy belief. Like, share, and watch the full story in our latest video.